Welcome to Lesson 4 of Section 6, where you have been learning how to clean out trauma wounds to move past the pain. In the last lesson, you learned how to use a trauma narrative based on exposure and integrative therapy methods to heal underlying trauma. The Reflection and Healing Activities Guide linked below this lesson will also include a sample trauma narrative for you to get an idea of the process and how to start. However, before you get started working on a trauma narrative of your own, please complete the reflections in this video and consider the other activity ideas that might provide additional help at this stage of your healing. First, spend a few moments reflecting again on what you learned about confession and grief and what these might mean as you begin your trauma narrative. After considering what you learned in Lesson 1 of this section, how have you experienced the power of confession in the past? Also, based on the description of confession in Lesson 1, make a list of the benefits of confession. List as many as you can to help encourage yourself in this process. Also consider which parts of the grief process, as described in Lesson 2, you can identify with the most at this time. Where have you been? Where are you now? How does this make you feel about writing a trauma narrative at this point in time? Also, what are you concerned will be particularly difficult about confessing and facing the truth of your trauma and losses when working on writing your trauma narrative? Is there anything else you think you need to do to prepare? Once you have completed your reflections and you're ready to begin the work of writing your trauma narrative, remember to include these important steps. First, review the sample trauma narrative provided in your Reflections and Healing Activities Guide, linked below. Second, remember to schedule yourself enough time to work on your narrative and make sure you have a safe and undistracted place in which to write it. For the important work of trauma to be done, the traumatized part of us needs space and permission to release the emotions that have been stuck. It is especially important when writing the part of your trauma narrative identifying your feelings and needs that you have a private and safe place to write it. Consider getting away, locking your door, or completing it when you are alone at home for the best results. Third, make sure to schedule some extra time for self-care afterward in case you need it. This might include time to take a nap, go for a walk, pet your cat, eat food that you love, spend time with a friend, take a bath, or other enjoyable and self-nurturing activities. Fourth, please remember to ask questions in the private community or in a weekly coaching call if you need more feedback or guidance before or during the process. Finally, when you have completed the entire trauma narrative, post your work in the private Hope community for encouragement, prayer, and feedback, or remember to email at me at dkingglpg@yahoo.com if you're not comfortable posting the details of your specific narrative. When completing the trauma narrative, I encourage you to also use the Identifying Feelings list provided in the Activities Guide to identify specific feelings you had or have as a result of the trauma experience. People often have a mixture of feelings toward those who hurt them. Even positive or compassionate feelings can arise and feel confusing. It's okay, and I encourage you, though, to identify any and all feelings you may have had as you sort through the pain, and using this list is a good way to identify feelings if that's something that's difficult for you. You can use this statement also to help identify or fill in the feelings if you are having trouble as you write your narrative. I felt blank when blank happened because blank, and I wish blank. Sometimes using a statement like this helps us to be more clear and specific about exactly how our feelings were connected to the pain of the past. Finally, sometimes dealing with trauma and facing painful events can create additional anxiety or reactions as past trauma is activated or triggered. This is necessary to some degree for healing to take place. Healing past trauma is a form of emotional surgery, and when parts of us are hurting, it is natural to have that part of us not want to be touched or to activate past fear. That's why it's important to typically write your trauma narrative in the phases described in Lesson 3. To help manage anxiety, you can also use deep breathing exercises, muscle relaxation, and other somatic techniques to calm your body and reduce the anxiety while working through the trauma. If you become overwhelmed for some reason during the process, in a bad way, please stop immediately and consider using one of these techniques to help calm you before moving on. These activities also help your body and nervous system to learn that it can respond differently and learn to feel safe, even though this was not true at the time. Links to several videos demonstrating these techniques are included in your reflection and activity guide. As you begin to write your trauma narrative in the days ahead, please know that I am praying for you and that God has been leading you to this time. He is ready to meet with you in His love and grace to help you in the next steps of your healing. I look forward to hearing what God has done in the days ahead and as you post or send to me your final narrative before moving on to the next lesson. As a final reminder, it is okay and often necessary to take your time on this lesson and with completing your narrative. I'll see you in the next lesson.